Hi, Paul. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. I'm just wondering, Paul, could you tell us a little bit about the history of LGBT organizing in Sudbury?
I certainly can, and thank you for this opportunity. And hi, everybody. Sorry I can't be there in person. Um, so, going back, history in Sudbury LGBTQ. I did a fourth year research assignment thesis back in my sociology degree a number of decades ago, and I interviewed six gay and lesbian people that had lived in Sudbury for some decades before. So I talked to them about their history, the social history in Sudbury in the 1970s and 80s. And back in those times, gays and lesbians and bisexuals would gather in very informal situations and meet, wherever they could. I mean, I heard that miners underground would meet each other, and that there was some gay men would meet at a Finnish sauna, and others socialized in house settings. And there was one man had a farm, and he had a barn. He used to have barn dances, and it was all word of mouth, and it was all people getting together to have that social space that was positive for them. I mean, that's, I think, what they were looking for at that time. And this would be just after being gay was no longer considered illegal in Canada. And lesbians that I talked to, they got to meet each other downtown. And I remember there was certain bars like May's Tavern. I don't know if anybody remembers that. I don't think it exists anymore. Or the Lido, and they would literally take space and protect their girlfriends and have a good time downtown. And they were tougher, so if they were questioned or threatened at all, they didn't mind fighting. And I heard a lot of stories of violence, where lesbians were, staking their space and fighting men off who, would otherwise be prejudiced against them or not want them there. Um, Eventually, with the disco era, there were certain discos in town, bars in town where people would gather, and it would be, again, word of mouth. It's like, hey, we're all going to go to, and I remember doing this in the late 70s, early 80s, no, late 70s. I remember, it was at disco times, and going to one bar or the other, because that was by word of mouth where we would all end up, and you'd end up with a bunch of gays and lesbians in one place having a good time dancing to the music. And again, though, it wasn't always safe. There was always this chance of people challenging us, homophobic remarks. At one point, part of my research, a couple different people talked about an event in one bar where a gang of guys gathered outside the bar, and the gays and lesbians in the bar had to fight their way out. And one guy got a tire iron in the face and got a broken jaw, and it was this upsets me when I talk about it, but it was this fight. And so I have friends now who go back, think back there, and like, they had to fight these gay men and lesbian women that were wanting space to have social space, and to be gay, and to meet each other, and to have that social interaction, had to fight for it. And they got hurt, and the police wouldn't do anything. That one specific fight, the police came and watched to see who was going to win, and it was violent. My story is I left town. I moved to Ottawa, where it could be a little bit safer. But my friends stayed here and lived here. I came back after a couple of years. But so when I came back, there was an organization had formed. It was called SAGA, Sudbury All Gay Alliance. And the purpose of this organization was to create safe space. So they had a phone line, they had an office in someone's basement. They would retrieve calls, and then two members of the SAGA organization would go and meet this person for coffee, and then they would get invited to our dances. And SAGA would have dances. We'd rent a local hall, and again, this would be the 1980s now, and we'd rent a local hall, and put on a dance, and I was very involved in those times. Excuse me, and it was a lot of fun, and we used to have that social interaction, that really important place to have your identity and to interact with people with the same identity. Um, that that wasn't offered naturally anywhere else. We had to create that space ourselves, and the organization, I think, flourished for a while and did well. And I remember holding workshops and having people come in and talk to groups of people about coming out and about gay rights and whatnot. Um, but again, it was it wasn't it didn't last. That organization died out, and then we had a new one called GLASS, the Gay and Lesbian Association of Sudbury. Um, it was basically just a new name. Again, we continued having dances. I remember at one point, someone opened a gay bar in Sudbury, and that kind of cut into our dance attendance, because suddenly there was a gay bar in town, and that became a place to socialize. Um, the What we did do then, when dances wasn't the focus, I remember in 1995 we held a conference. It was all Northern Ontario conference. Basically, any gay, lesbian, bisexual people across the north were invited to come and attend this weekend conference. We rented a couple of halls. We had a introductory supper on Friday night. We held workshops all day Saturday. We had over 250 people attend from as far as Thunder Bay, Muskoka area, Timmins, North Bay, of course. So all across Northern Ontario, we had 150 people. It was a very rewarding experience, and we held a dance that Saturday night, and it was a lot of fun. And we always had plans. We always, in the back of our mind, was, well, we're going to do this again in like a year or 5 years, or make it annual. It didn't happen, but it was a very rewarding experience nonetheless. Around that same time, organizations like the women's organization in Sudbury drew off people. Like lesbians would gravitate to there because they needed more feminist oriented space. The AIDS crisis in the 1980s hit Sudbury hard, and a young AIDS group, and I think Gary probably talked about this, developed, and a lot of the gay men went there for support and went there to give support. So, and again, that place was funded eventually and became more officialized. There's a term for that, I'm sure. And it's institutionalized, supported by the government. So again, it became a more of a condoned institution, and people were more comfortable going there. The gay organization in Sudbury, LGBT organization, GLASS, folded. And right after that, we formed a committee to hold our first Pride March in Sudbury, 1997. We had our very first Pride March. And again, that was a big event for us. And it was a struggle within our community, whether to have this and how safe we would be. Again, we have history of violence, and people attended. We had probably 150, 200 people. We marched through the streets in Sudbury. And there were people on the street that were supporting us, and there were people on the street that were not supporting us. But we held that event, and I'm proud to say that Sudbury has, from that day forward, always had an annual Gay Pride March. And there is a Pride committee that comes together every year to make that happen. And that committee has a succession into various different people from various different places. Sometimes more lesbian, sometimes more gay men, sometimes now more transgendered people are involved. Now it's being supported by banks and other donations from other organizations. But it's that I think that's one success story that Sudbury has managed to maintain. I was on the first couple of years on the Pride Committee, and then I was back again on the Pride Committee 10 years in. But yeah, it's a good event, and I'm glad it's still going. Still, Sudbury does not have an LGBTQ focused organization specifically, other than around that one event. Um, anyway, the computer screen just went off, so I put it back on. It's back on, I think. it just went to sleep. That was distracting. What else can I say? This is going very quickly. Can you ask more questions? Do you have some questions to ask?
Yeah, so like when you look at that history of organizing, some of what you talked about was first starting with creating safer spaces maybe for socializing and meeting up, right? And then like the various phases you talked about then there were you had the Pride March. You also had these different organizations that came and went.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering if you want to talk a little bit about you know what happened after and what the current context is in Sudbury for gay, lesbian, transgender, bisexual, two-spirited organizing, socializing, like any of those kinds of things, support. Yeah.
Sure. I mean, again, one of the big themes was space, social space. To interact, to develop your identity, to interact with people with the same identity. I mean, there was several gay bars that started and closed down, but the one that has lasted is Zig's. I mean, that has been over the years a focus of socializing. Um, to some greater or lesser degrees. Right now, I would question how functional that was for developing a community, whether it's really gay or whether it's really healthy for a community to develop around a drinking establishment. But that does sort of take care of some of the socialization needs. Other than that, there has really been very little. I mean, the Pride event in the summer is a big event, and I see a lot of people coming out. I personally have helped organize a few dances that have brought sort of the old guard out. So I see a lot of gays and lesbians my age that will come out to an event if we organize it. I think isolation is a big issue in Sudbury. We don't have that motivation to have a cohesive LGBTQ organization, and I think that's a real disservice. I think to LGBT people here in Sudbury and two-spirited people here in Sudbury. Services now, I mean, happen. I mean, in places like Sassy, and that they have a youth group for queer kids. Neswagamak, the Friendship Center did, and now the Health Center, Skagamakwe. I mean, they have discussion groups for two-spirited people. It's dispersed. It's really fragmented and siloed. Laurentian has, even on campus, some places where it's safer to talk about and be queer and lesbian, bisexual, transgender. But even on campus, they're very much siloed. We have at Thornlow, they have the Gender and Diversity Women's Studies. The Pride office, the Pride room here on Laurentian is a small room that holds about 8 people. Other than that, throughout Sudbury, Razo Access AIDS will sometimes hold a coming out workshop or something for gay men, but their purpose is to eventually teach about HIV and hepatitis and things like that, sexually transmitted diseases, and not about gay liberation or gay identity or community building. So. And I've thought about it over the years, and I just, it's hard to pull people together in an environment that is less than positive. You know, I don't think gay people aren't necessarily being beaten up in the streets every day, but things have happened. Violence from early on to even more recent does happen, and I believe, my own story included, gay people are isolated. We live our own lives separate from what could be a community or what could be an organizing entity, or a community building process, and it takes effort. It takes a lot of effort, and it's not supported effort. It's like I have always been um, encouraging of and pushing for building community. When the people I talk to, when I put on a dance to raise money for the Pride Parade or the Pride March in Sudbury, um, when I talk to people, I organized an older men's discussion group, or I helped organize it. I took part in it. Um, that was held at Réseau Access AIDS for a number of years. That eventually disbanded, but it is really hard in an environment like Sudbury to bring people, queer people together, LGBTQ people, two-spirited people together in such a way that they can build a cohesive movement or a cohesive community. It is a very diverse group of people, diverse in age, diverse in genders, multiple genders, diverse in sexual orientations, and diverse in ethnic and racial identities. And it's not a huge population. Sudbury is not a big city, so we don't have a huge population. I think a lot of people leave. Young people who are part of the queer community, they take the opportunity to leave town and live a life elsewhere. I've been told that I would be happier if I left. Um, so there's a real struggle, I think. For me, I would struggle to create community. There's not an opportunity always. I think if a couple of people come together, you can talk about it. People are really they're not adverse to it. I think they're afraid because gathering together is a challenge. The Pride Week in Sudbury is about as much as people can take, and organizing that Pride Week, I think, takes a significant amount of the people that are into organizing things. Those people that have that capacity to do that. Um, we're aging. It's an aging community. So I'm talking about people that have history in the 1970s and 80s and 90s. We're part of the baby boom generation, and even though we'd like to see a community, we can't make it happen unless a larger um, group, a larger diversity of queer people come together to build something. I think Sudbury needs a counseling center for queer and two-spirited people. We need a social um, community center. Toronto has the 519 Community Center on Church Street. I mean, it's a three-story older building with a beautiful addition. It has meeting rooms and activity rooms, and all kinds of events can happen there, and organizing can happen. Um, I think Sudbury would benefit if we just had one room or two rooms where we could come together and actually, plan, develop, take action, to do things to make, I think, a queer life in Sudbury more comfortable. Because right now, I don't think it's comfortable. I know people that are very happy in their couples, men that are married to men, women that are married to women, but they do live isolated lives. And I think they feel it and they know it. There's not a community to be involved in that is strictly for um, sexual minority and gender minority people.
Can I ask another question?
You can ask another question, please do.
Let me ask you, and again, like you might have some knowledge of other cities and other communities. I'm just wondering if you would speak about your perception of how Sudbury and GLBTQ 2S organizing in Sudbury compares to maybe some of the surrounding rural communities, and then compares to some of the bigger cities in Ontario.
Sudbury has the potential, because of its larger population, as far as a Northern Ontario city, to really, I think, make things happen. And we could become a center for people coming in from the outside. When we held that conference in 1995, it was like, I was shocked. I thought we'd have like 15 people maybe, and we had 250 people come to this, many of which, more than half, were from other towns around. I do know other people exist, gay people exist in Timmins. I mean, I touch base with a few of them once in a while. They come down for certain things. They come down for the Pride event, the Pride Week in Sudbury, because it's like a vacation destination in the summer for them to come to Pride from Timmins. I did go to school in North Bay for a while, and I kind of touched base with North Bay groups there. Back then, they were having coffee evenings at various coffee places that they would choose, reminiscent of what we did in Sudbury in the 1970s. Word of mouth. Okay, this Thursday we're going to meet at a certain place. Is there a gay and lesbian organization? I don't think so. I know of a few people who live there, and they have nothing like that there. It's even, I think, more isolating than Sudbury. The island had their first, I think it was their first Pride Parade last year. I didn't go to it. I know a few people who attended, and they were shocked. Little Current had, a significant amount of people marching up the street waving pride flags. So they had a Pride March, and it's going to happen again this year. So things are happening, but I think it's much more than a Pride March. Toronto has a huge Pride Parade every year. A couple of years ago, they hosted World Pride, and it was insane. Like 1 million people were in Toronto for this event. I'm part of several political organizations and union organizations that meet in Toronto, and sometimes there's an LGBTQ caucus that would meet, and inevitably, there are 2 people from outside of Toronto, 12 people from in Toronto, and the entire discussion is what they're doing for their Pride Parade, or what they're doing in Toronto for some LGBT event or whatever. And that's not the place for, the 2 people from outside of Toronto to have a voice saying, what can we do in our communities? Toronto, I mean, it's Toronto-centric. I mean, nothing against Toronto, except other places need their own. And I really do think Sudbury needs its own organization. And if you go down to Southern Ontario, for example, I know people who live in North York. Well, there's nothing LGBTQ in North York because they can go to Toronto. Okay, and I think it's the same in Sudbury. There's little happening here because you can move away to Toronto or Ottawa. There are things happening in Ottawa too. Or you can just go and visit. So that's your gay vacation, is to go to a larger city for a week or a weekend or for a Pride Parade or whatever. We're still not getting the resources and the services that we need in Northern Ontario. And that's my opinion. The gay movements, gay liberation, legalization of same-sex marriage, that kind of thing has happened, and a lot of people feel like we have arrived. Well, you've got what you want, right? What more could you ask? Well, society hasn't changed. I mean, our families in Sudbury haven't shifted too much. You still hear about young people, teenagers being homeless because they can't live at home here in Sudbury. I mean, it's still an issue, in the schools. It hasn't changed in our community at the individual and family and neighborhood level or school level. So there is still work to be done, and I just feel like the energy gets sucked away by something as big and beautiful as Toronto, or the Pride Parade in Toronto, or even in Ottawa. I'm at a loss at times to know what to do, but I would certainly like to see something happen above and beyond just one Pride Week in Sudbury.
Yeah. And this you may have just kind of answered this with your last sentence, but if all of a sudden, I'm going to ask you the miracle question, Paul.
Okay, good. The miracle question. Perfect.
You go to bed tonight, you wake up tomorrow morning and Sudbury has an active, vibrant GLBTQ 2S community, all kinds of support, the policy changes you'd like to see, the organizational changes you'd like to see, the changes in culture you'd like to see. Can you talk a little bit about what that would look like for you?
Okay, number one, there would be that opportunity to socialize and build community. I could go and walk into a location and say hi to a whole bunch of people and feel completely in my element with the people that I know I share an identity with. People who are struggling, people who are coming out, people who are struggling with aging and being queer, people who are struggling with accepting their homosexuality or dealing with their families that aren't accepting will have a place to go to be accepted and to be counseled. There would be counseling facilities, social events, learning opportunities, that encouragement to be an active part of your community as opposed to isolating with or without your partner in whatever home you live in, which is the situation now. And for young people, for old people, for people of all ages, we need that social connection to feel fully, I think, functional, fully healthy, fully accepted, happy, and I know I don't get it, and I know a lot of other people that aren't getting it in Sudbury. And so that's it would be a vibrant community center that would be inclusive of all genders, gender fluidity, the queer spectrum, as well as two-spirited people, people of all races and ethnicities to come together with the unifying idea of being in some way queer and be supportive of each other. I think that because right now those services are offered in various places, but that community feeling doesn't come through with those kinds of services. We need that extra bit of social space, social interaction, feeling of belonging, and that social support to really be, I think, a part of the Sudbury community, to feel that we're a part of the Sudbury community in a very real, tangible way. I mean, that's my vision. I would love to see that. I mean, I'm going to work towards it. I mean, I tried organizing a little bit of that through the school systems, but that was the gay straight alliances. I mean, they don't necessarily cut it, and the schools that I've discovered are not necessarily the location where you're going to have that kind of safety and identity affirmation happening. We need it in our community somewhere.
So I really appreciate you sharing that vision for inclusion and for services and for a social space and a feeling, a place where you can feel you belong. Are there also policy and structural changes that you see need to happen in Sudbury in order to kind of push the agenda forward, the gay liberation, GLBTQ2S liberation agenda forward?
Policy and structural changes. That's like a whole different tangent.
Yeah, what needs to happen?
What needs to happen? I think through the health care system those kinds of services, there needs to be a space open for that. What I've noticed in the past, going to healthcare summits, health equity summits, that Francophone populations are serviced by a Francophone health center. Mm-hmm. Indigenous populations are serviced by an Indigenous health center. The rest of health services are Anglophone and service everyone else. And I think it's that kind of community-based, community-focused healthcare that needs to happen, community building care, community health approach that would help LGBTQ two-spirited people develop what they need to be more healthy in the Sudbury community. Yeah, and that's. I'm glad you asked that question. It made me think of what I already know, that we do need that. I think that policy and those services to be put forward to support queer people and two-spirited people in Sudbury. And I think it's doable. I mean, those services kind of happen sporadically in little silos. If they came together in a more unified space, then the community aspect could really follow through and be there to support people in a more tangible, more identity affirming way.
I have one more question, Paul.
Yeah.
Which doesn't mean that you can't talk about whatever you want to as we continue. But my one more question is, what do you hope to see from social workers and allies in supporting both the needs of GLBTQ2S people in Sudbury and the structural changes that you would like to see?
I think education is an important part of this. I don't think there's enough people that understand it or know about it to be able to promote it. Even within the LGBT communities, again, there's that stagnation of people in their own isolation where they're not seeing beyond that, and they're not seeing beyond their day-to-day existence to realize that they even need community, right? And so the broader community needs an education to move from some sense of tolerance to a more accepting space, and the queer community needs an education to understand that consciousness raising, that the personal is political, that whole idea that we need to learn about our own selves and what we need and what we could ask for. And I think the social work community, the healthcare community, needs to learn that and be able to teach it to the clients that are coming that are queer, LGBTQ two-spirited clients. Somehow that message has to get out, and we don't have a venue for it, right? So that keeps that stagnation in place. That keeps us isolated. That keeps us lacking in community and lacking in those connections. Because I think there's a big enough population. We would just have to figure out ways of connecting in a positive way. Internalized homophobia is real. I like the term homonegativity. It's not as dramatic as homophobia, but it's certainly not accepting. And it's that tolerance. I think homonegativity and tolerance go together. It's like, yeah, we'll put up with them as long as they don't go beyond a certain line, right? And I think LGBTQ people in Sudbury have accepted that space and aren't going to cross the line because they don't know that they can. So it's education, education within institutions, education within political structures, the municipality, practice fields of practice, including all medical fields and social work, counseling. We need to put that out there that gay affirmative, therapy, gay affirmative counseling, gay affirmative healthcare, and we have to become more aware of the homonegativity that exists everywhere. I talk to gay and lesbian people, young gay and lesbian people, and the homonegativity that comes out of their mouth when I try and talk about building community shocks me and hurts me. I walk out of those conversations just shaking my head thinking, holy cow, how can they be so negative about their own identity and that they are? And they don't have the opportunity to unlearn that or to learn something different. Who's telling them that? There's no one in Sudbury that can tell them that. And they're not all coming to talk to me. So it's perhaps the people in your class that are working with the Pride committee could talk about that a little bit because they're experiencing some of it. It's a struggle. It is a struggle to work with LGBTQ people right now, for a complex number of reasons.
Any last thoughts or words?
I think that was it. It's a struggle, but it's a struggle that can be done. And so the message out there is go, and when you talk to LGBTQ people, look for that homo negativity and try and contradict it, and give them that opportunity to talk about what their community would look like if they had a community, what their social circle would look like, if it was fuller, if it was more dynamic, if it included various generations and genders and racialized groups, inclusive. We Sudbury's behind in a lot of those thinking, that way of thinking. It's a very working class, resource based industry town, and everything that goes with that is that loaded, but it's true. Everything that goes with that. These are my father figures, cousins, brother-in-laws, nephews, that and their wives, and I said that in a very specific way. This is how it works here, and it's a very specific culture, and that's what we have to address when we're out there dealing with people, whether it's within a counseling situation or whether it's on the street with a picket sign. It's that whole space, that whole gambit. I think that's everything.
Oh, thank you so much, Paul, for spending some time and sharing your knowledge and your experience and your wisdom and your hopes with us.
No, this was good. It was a good opportunity for me to just sort of put it all out there. And if anybody wants to get back to me and discuss this some more, I mean, I'm open to that. Maybe next class I'm in, we can talk about it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we also have your email address on the syllabus.
This is true. Email me if you want to talk to me.
Yeah.
Are we done?
Yeah.